All I'm gonna say es que me quieren agitar, me citan a gritar. Soy como una roca, palabras no me tocan. Adentro hay un volcán que pronto va a estallar. Yo quiero estar tranquilo.
There you go.
And you're listening to the Brown Perspective. I'm Eduardo, and I'm here with the guy who invented quiet quitting. R.O.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing well, man. Are you a quiet quitter or what?
Never.
Never.
I just learned that term in the last 2 weeks as well.
Someone who did not quit, someone who always performed were the Enanitos Verdes. And we got news that Marciano Cantero uh, passed away. So I think that, at least for me, Lamento Boliviano and some of the other songs that Enanitos Verdes played were pretty significant. So
It's unfortunate that today also Queen Elizabeth passed away because for me that grew up with Enanitos Verdes, I didn't I didn't even see it on my Twitter feed because the feed was mainly Queen Elizabeth and a few other things. So I just found out about it earlier today from you, and yeah. So his death is overshadowed by that of the Queen, at least here in America. I'm sure in Latin America, it's a little more balanced, but I can't help but wonder if he also led the fast life with sex, drugs, and rock and roll because 62 years old is really young for someone to pass away. And this article here says that he had gone undergone surgery to remove one of his kidneys, and so I'm not sure if there were complications with the surgery. There's no more information at this point, but it really is unfortunate. Grew up. I'm sure you did as well. But here in when I grew up in LA in the 90s, that's when rock en español it had a comeback. Just like you remember when reggaeton came around in the early 2000s, and then it died, it fizzled away for a while, and all of a sudden it just came back. And so that was rock en español too, because it was pretty big in the 80s, early 90s. It kind of it was there. It wasn't in the background, but it felt like the late 90s. There was this explosion of artists, and along with them was Enanitos Verdes with their classic Lamento Boliviano. And anybody that grew up from our generation is familiar with that song, even if they don't know who sings it, even if they don't really know the lyrics. They've heard it somewhere, either from friends, they've heard it at the club. Yeah, Lamento Boliviano is really there's a few rock en español songs that if you're in LA and you've gone out to the clubs in LA, and you know how they do it in LA, where when it starts getting late, towards last call, depending on the DJ, they'll bust out some Vicente Fernandez or some Ramon Ayala, and you might even get Lamento Boliviano in some cases. And Lamento Boliviano felt like it was like one of those songs that could really light the roof on fire.
yeah, like the roof on fire. But I think part of it was because of that line of "Y yo estoy aquí,
Yeah.
borracho y
But just
loco."
that intro, the way it opened up, is just I just remember the whole club would just go crazy with that song. Especially if you went to a rock en español club. Remember, well, there's a few clubs in New York
La
La Cueva in New York.
Cueva.
Oh man, every single time you always knew that DJ Replay that wasn't you knew that he was gonna play that song, and you kind of anticipated it, and you were like, yeah, it's coming. And but then when it came, it just hit you, and it was always great.
That's
So
that's when I play music. That's one of my go-tos, particularly for the right type of party.
yeah,
That's a go-to.
that's one of the closers. Well, yeah, I mean you could play it at any time during the night, but definitely huge influence on us. Lamento Boliviano, La Muralla Verde, and I'm sure if I play here just a few seconds, I hope we don't get in trouble. See that intro? I just such a classic intro, and it stays with you. And then La Cordillera as well. Those are the top three songs. Obviously, I'm not like I can't name all of the Enanitos Verdes songs because I never owned the albums because I didn't have any money growing up to buy them. So you're right. You listen to whatever came on the radio, and maybe if somebody you knew or your older brother bought the album, then you could listen to all of them. But growing up, I never had the albums, and I just as I got older and YouTube became more and more popular, I never went back. Maybe I will now, but I just never went back and listened to like all of the albums. I'm sure there's other great songs there, but definitely the three iconic songs of late '90s and early 2000s are those three.
I'm surprised you already have a vinyl and a turntable somewhere in your house.
Well, but that's '80s. I'm not that old.
No,
I'm the CD generation, man. The floppy
that's right.
disk, CD generation, mini.
Columbia House in the
Yeah,
house.
no, vinyl, the vinyl records, those are before me. My dad had 8-track in Mexico. I
Mm,
remember playing that a few times. But yeah,
yeah, see, yeah. No, I was just gonna say that I know some of you may have heard our episode on the Netflix show Rompan Todo, which is an amazing history of rock en español, and
it's a bit biased.
los Enanitos Verdes. ¿Qué pasó?
It's a bit biased. Sorry, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Biased by whose standards?
Well, it's very subjective. They highlight some bands that are okay, and then they leave a whole
Okay.
bunch of others out. And I actually think they didn't really focus a lot on Enanitos Verdes.
They did not actually,
Yeah.
but I think they were part of the movement. And I think for the Enanitos Verdes, I particularly El Lamento Boliviano, there's definitely that strong indigenous sound that comes with Lamento Boliviano. And I mean the name itself, right? You have a white Argentinian band talking about Lamento Boliviano. And so in some ways, there's this amazing poetry, this consciousness that this song represents. There's this kind of a social consciousness and resistance that's a little lighter than maybe some of the other artists and some of the other bands that from Mexico, from Argentina, from other parts of Latin America. But I do get Caifanes vibes from them. I feel like they're very similar in terms of them incorporating unique sounds, unique stories, and do it in a way that also is musically so rich.
Yeah, they certainly didn't. They certainly like to try to incorporate native or indigenous elements into their music. La Cordillera as well, with the
Ciscus.
El Ciscus.
Hmm.
And but why do they have to be white Argentines? Why can't they just be Argentines? Maybe they grew up in humble beginnings. Maybe they didn't really get a chance to benefit a lot from that white Argentine privilege.
It's true.
Don't
It's true.
typecast them,
But I
man.
think and it's yeah, Ciscus. And I think is yeah, it's true. I mean, I don't know, but it's just that you wouldn't expect them to to hacer esa temática, to
Hmm.
talk about those themes. And I know you also had the Chilean band, Los Prisioneros, that, I mean, obviously they were a lot more,
Hmm.
some of their songs were definitely more against the Pinochet regime.
Yeah.
By the way, I know that Chile is considering a new constitution, so
Wasn't it
we'll
recently?
talk about that. Yeah, we'll
Well,
talk
that one.
about that another episode.
Yeah, wasn't it rejected? Unless there's a follow-up vote, but the changes were rejected last I
That's true. So
checked.
I think now there's going to be a new effort to try
Hmm.
to get it done. But again, so it's both Argentina, Chile, um, parts that were at that time really, really a lot of the political activism was a reaction to the dictatorships, a lot in large part supported by the American regime.
Yeah, but as far as I know from the songs that I know, the Enanitos Verdes, they're not really. They don't lean heavily into the politics, and I'd have to listen to the entire albums to see if some of their other songs do. Remember also, I just remembered that about 10 or maybe even 15 years ago at this point, they did Tu Carcel, which is also, I think that one blew up, and a lot of people, maybe the newer generation, may actually know them from that song. There's a few bands that really like you can think of what's her name, the Mexican female artist, Julieta Venegas, as well as Natalia Lafourcade. That later on in their careers they started trying to reach deep into the rich culture and the variety of music within Mexico, and then they started doing covers. Like I think Natalia Lafourcade did a song with Ángeles Azules, but certainly when Enanitos Verdes did the cover of Tu Cárcel, that seemed like a departure. It seemed like they were something risky that they were trying, because you got to consider Los Bukis were really like a regional band that you can almost associate them with like Nacos in the U.S. I know Gustavo Arellano even did an article on that on Los Bukis, and so they definitely were not mainstream. They weren't like the cool kids in the U.S. were not saying that, oh, I grew up listening to Los Bukis, even though we all grew up around our parents listening to them. Especially I remember in Mexico when like either my mom or whoever was taking care of us at the house was like cleaning the house and cooking, they always had Los Bukis blasting. So I grew up with that music, but it wasn't the cool kids. And all of a sudden, Enanitos Verdes does a cover of that song, and I just remember like, well, that was an interesting song to cover. But
Well, it was
blew
such
up.
a cover, right? Because it's so difficult, right? And I think that's part of the brilliance of that cover, because I mean that guitar intro is so amazing, right? And it just kind of hooks you, and then it still has that same feeling, but it's such as an amazing song. I think it just also gives this amazing energy, like the way that they cover it.
Yeah, no, it certainly, yeah, it changed the format of it. I think they transformed the song enough and it made it more attractive to a lot of people that would have not listened to it or may not have enjoyed it con Los Bukis. I mean, I liked it from Los Bukis because I grew up with them. So I like both versions. But again, it was something that I think it was bold of them to go in that direction, and interesting that they drew inspiration from, of all like bands, from that one. It just goes to show you how much the music and the influences spread throughout Latin America. Because if I would have if you would have told me, oh, these guys are gonna do a cover of like a Mexican band, I don't think I would have thought, oh, they're gonna cover Marco Antonio Solis or one of his songs. Usually Marco Antonio Solis songs, they get turned into salsa instead, not necessarily like rock en español.
Well, all I'm gonna say is que me quieren agitar, me citan a gritar. Soy como una roca, palabras no me tocan. Adentro hay un volcán que pronto va a estallar. Yo quiero estar tranquilo.
There you go. Well, it's funny hearing you read the lyrics or recite them from memory. But I'm not sure if I told you this, but when I listen to music, I hardly pay attention to the lyrics. It's like I can tell you what some of the lyrics are, but I don't really memorize them. Maybe it's just me not memorizing them because I don't want to get tired of the song. But I usually just enjoy the music, just the whole thing. I just the singing becomes like another instrument. It becomes the words, and the singing becomes another part of the whole, what makes the whole song. And I just get lost in it. And I don't usually, it could be a song like Lamento Boliviano that I've heard almost my whole life at this point, and I wouldn't be able to sing the song from beginning to end because I never memorized the lyrics.
But when you're hearing it, you do though, right?
Well, sometimes. I mean, I have to let the singer lead.
So you're more at the chorus.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a melody guy, so I really like the melodies. I always say that I know a song is good if you can take the melody and play it with any other instrument, and I would still like it. Because there's so many songs like that. You could play it with the violin, you could play it with the piano, you could play it instrumental in any way. And if it's a good song, if it has a good melody, it'll be a good song with just instrumental.
I agree, and I think Los Enanitos Verdes y el maestro Marciano Cantero did some amazing songs, some amazing melodies. So it's unfortunate that we lost them at such a young age, but certainly grateful that he shared his voice and his talent. And even when you looked at him, I remember seeing the video. Hey, have you seen the video?
Yeah.
uh, he also looked very dorky, right? He had like this huge glasses, like with like real,
Yeah.
you can tell like a lot of augmento.
He always
So
he always
it was
reminded
funny
me
to
of,
see him.
yeah, Dana, what's the character from Saturday Night Live? Dana, is it Dana Carvey? He always reminded me of that guy. Both of them look dorky.
Yeah, he kind of had that
Yeah, he always
with the
reminded me of
thicker
this guy.
glasses.
So anyhow, I think well, actually, one other thing. So in 2019, he did a collaboration with J Balvin and Bad Bunny, Un Peso. I haven't heard it. I don't know if it came out already. Maybe they collaborated, but it was not released. So another song to
No,
go.
I think it did, but you know what? I think I heard it, but I can't remember it. But now I have to listen to it to see if I recognize his influence on that song.
Yeah, but it
And
just goes to,
that was a classic song. That I mean that was that whole collaboration was because I think it was part of the Oasis album, which I did hear cover to cover.
yeah, and it's a strange collaboration because you don't really see the reggaetoneros or the trap en español artists doing collaboration with not just with like rock en español artists, because rock en español at this point it's like very underground. There's really not a mainstream scene anymore. But for them to do it with old school, with these rockeros, you would think. I mean, there's only like a handful, right, that you can think of, like Maná, Caifanes, Juanes, Shakira. But the Enanitos Verdes is the last one that I would have thought they would have done a collaboration with. So it just goes to show you the influence of the band that they chose him. Because I'm not sure if, I mean, I haven't really, I know they were still touring and everything, but it's not like they were releasing new albums and they were still mainstream. I think if anything, they were probably still touring, but just mainly relying on their hits from like 10, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. I think that was the case, and now I regret not going to see them live.
Well, you can catch a live concert on YouTube these days, so at least you have that.
This is true.
But all right, I think we'll wrap it at that. So again, it's just unfortunate. May he rest in peace, and shout out to all of the Enanitos Verdes fans out there from the 90s and 2000s. We lost a big one today.
Yep, and just know que te amaremos por siempre.
All right. If y'all out there enjoy our content, make sure to check us out. We are Brown Perspective.
Ciao.